Good morning, good evening, good afternoon, everyone. Welcome in Salesforce Epics Hour. My name is Amit Chaudhary. I am your host and the founder of the Epics Hour. And today topic is SFI DevOps. And we have a special guest from the Salesforce team, Subham Gupta. Let me hand over for his introduction and the presentation. Hand over to you, Subham.
Yeah, thank you, Amit. Hi guys, as Amit mentioned, that today's topic is about the SFI DevOps. So it's my privilege to talk about something about the DevOps tools in terms of branching strategy, environment strategy, how we can do the Delta deployment. So we'll just quickly walk through about all of these topics. Uh, a quick note about me. So currently I'm working as a DevOps architect as part of the expert services team for the industries, Salesforce industries part. In terms of experience, I have like total more than 7 years of experience in IT and 5+ years in DevOps. So in terms of DevOps, like I have worked in most of the tools which are available in the market, the tech partner solution as well as the custom solution. So I am hands-on on writing scripts for Bitbucket pipeline, Jenkins, Azure DevOps, GitLab pipelines, GitHub Actions, obviously the IDX CLI, SFDX, RDX Workbench as well. So we'll quickly walk through the IDX Workbench and the how the pipeline works in the Bitbucket pipeline. So usually I basically give the consultations and I basically support the client about the implementation of the branching strategies, environment, overall the CI/CD pipeline part, and help them through their release planning calendar as well, right? Because that's very important in terms when you want to release something, how you are going to release it in terms of managing in terms of managing the developer workflow, setting up a DevOps team. So all of those things are really important. Moving to the agenda for today is it's Salesforce Industries Expert Services Maturity Model. So this is the maturity model that we have created after working with lot of clients, after learning so many things, right? So that's the model that we think should be our end goal for each and every client. And that's what we have observed, like using this model, we can achieve whatever we wanted, as in terms of the best practices around the branching strategy, best practice around the environment strategies, how we can use the environment, how we can do a parallel development, because that's the ask from most of the clients. Continuous integration, continuous delivery, we'll quickly talk about that as well, how we can do the data deployment, how developers can merge their code back into the repository and create a pull request, how the pipeline will be triggered, and once the pipeline is merged after approval from the tech lead or dev lead, how we are going to trigger the continuous delivery part. We'll quickly walk through, or I try to give a quick demo about the Industry DX CLI as well as the Workbench as well, like how developers can use that tool to migrate stuff between orgs or between org and repository. So starting with the project development maturity model, as you can see in this picture, what happens is each and every client would have user story tracking, the sort of ALM tool, right? So there are various tools available in the market. Here we have taken the example of Jira, where people can track their user stories, issues, they can be tracked, right? So in case of any bug fixes, issue can be raised and that can be assigned to a developer so that they can start working on it. Same goes with the user story part. So the flow would be, as soon as a user story or the Jira ticket has been assigned to the developer, they will start working on those, either the new features or on the bug fixes. So either they can work. So basically there are two sort of development model in terms of how to use the environments or the orgs. So either a common development model where all the developers are working on a single sandbox, and that's where they start. Basically we do they start working on a sprint, and all the developers are working in a sim environment. They all are doing the development. So each model has got its own pros and cons. I won't talk about those pros and cons, but it's the client choice, right? Whatever they want to use. So they can use single development org for all the developers of one sprint, or they can use their own or individual development sandboxes. They can use the scratch orgs as well. That's perfectly fine. So let's, here in this example, what we have taken is, let's say if developers are using their own sandboxes, so they would have day 1, day 2, day 3, and then developer will start working on the code base or the development part, right? So once they have developed the code, how they're going to migrate it to repository. So here I'm taking the source driven development model. So now what happens is we do call source or repository as a source of truth. So what happens in the source of truth is whatever developers are developing, they're going to put it into a feature branch, and that branch would be created from one of the main branch. If we'll talk about the Git flow model, anyways, I'm going to explain about the Git flow model very quickly in the future slides. What happens is in the Git flow model, we have a dev branch, we have a release branch, we have master branch. So for developers, we have a dev branch where they are going to develop their code. So developer would be cutting out a feature branch from the dev branch, and they are going to migrate their code from their org to the repository. Now, what happens is, as orgs, we need to connect to some tool, right? So that's where we recommend to use the IDX Workbench CLI. Now, if you're going with some tech partner solution like Copado, Flossom, and there are various tools available in the market. So there you have a proper either a managed package, or you are basically working on the application part itself. So there you can connect your org, your repository, and then you can start or select your components and then start migrating the component between the org and repo or repo to org. It's like basically vice versa as well, right? So you can migrate stuff from your repository back to the org as well, so that you are always working on the latest code base. Now, in terms of, so this is all about how developers are going to migrate. But in terms of pipeline, we need some CLIs so that developers or whatever code we are migrating in the repository, that can be triggered for the deployment part as well. So what happens is, those CLIs are SFDX CLI. So you guys might already be aware about the SFDX CLIs. It's like how we can migrate the SF metadata from the org or from the repository to the next higher environment. So I usually call higher environment as the part to production as well, because that's basically comprises of your CIT. If the client want to have a CIT sort of environment where they can do the component integration testing. But in this diagram, I've taken SIT, which is system integration testing. PSR is my performance review. UAT is for user acceptance testing, and then finally the production. Now, here you can see that in the staging environment, I've kept it after production because that we are going to use for the hot fixing part as well, right? So for the current release, what happens is, so here you can see we are currently having 3 releases. Current release 3 is in SIT. Your release 2 might be in UAT. So this happens when your release has been signed off SIT and it's almost done in UAT. Otherwise, most of the time, what would happen is one of the release is in development, so that has not been deployed to SIT. So one of the release, so let's take an example that release 0 is already there in production, or release 1 in production. Release 2 is in SIT and UAT, and then release 3 is still under the development. So that's where you are working on 3 releases. Now, let's say if there is a bug in for release 1, we can quickly fix it in the hotfix environment, move it to a staging environment, test it, and then finally deploy it into the production environment. Now, we will be deploying the code into staging and hotfix after the production sign off. So that's where you see this box. Now, in terms of SIT and UAT, we can keep on promoting our code. And once it has been passed from SIT, then we'll be promoting it to UAT. So this is sort of a project maturity model. The labels that you see here, so what happens is, we, as part of the expert services of the Salesforce Industries, we do get engaged during the designing phase itself, so that we can recommend all of these best practices to the client, and then they can start using those even before developers start developing the code. So once the code development is done, they have the pipeline already created, and then people can start using it. And that's where we have seen that the success for the deployment is very high when you already have a pipeline. But when you don't have a pipeline, you start to do that part, as in putting up your code into the source control and then migrating via pipeline. When you start doing it in the middle of the project, that needs a lot of efforts. That's first thing. And then you might need some sort of outage as well, because whenever you're setting up a new process, you might have to stop the old process for some time, right? So that might need some outage, a lot of effort. Then you would have to train your developers as well. So the recommendation that we do say is, like, we should always start involving the DevOps team or the DevOps experts during the design phase itself, so people notice the value of what DevOps bring into the project. Quickly moving to the next slide. So in terms of the DevOps setup, what we recommend from our side is there's like custom solution, then we have a tech partner solution as well. So from the custom solution side, all of these tools that you see here, Jenkins, Bitbucket, GitLab, GitHub Actions, Azure DevOps, so all of these tools are available. Now, from the tech partner solution, what we recommend is like Copado, because that's tried and tested and that support SFI. There are other tools available in the market as well, like Flossom, AutoRabbit, and all other tools. CLI, SFDX CLI, and then Industry Workbench for developers to migrate the code from their org to the repository, or a repository to the org. And then obviously the Industry Workbench CLI which is also known as Velocity Build Tool, VBT. So guys who have already worked with Velocity, they would know the usage, how VBT is used, but I'll be quickly walk through, providing some information for that as well. In terms of repository, so what I've seen is most of the repositories are already always like, they are all same, right? So they all uses Git in the background. So Bitbucket, GitLab, GitHub Action, Microsoft Azure, AWS, so many repository options available in the market. So you can use any of these. So there's no restrictions. Automated testing, so we have a vendor called as iTest, which can help you out in doing the end-to-end flow for the SFI components, like whatever flow we might have created with OmniScript integration procedure data raptors, those can be tested automatically. So what we say is, like, if client want to automate that part and start doing the end-to-end flow testing, they can connect with this vendor, and then this can be integrated with Copado as well as we can put it into the pipeline to trigger the automated testing. User story tracking, as we have seen in the project maturity model, that we are going to use the Jira as a tool. Or it's not restricted to Jira. If people are having Microsoft Suite, then they can use Microsoft dashboards, anything, right? So any ALM tool that they want to use, or as a user story tracking or the bug fixing environment. Now, quickly, build versus buy. So what happens is, whenever you are going to create your own pipeline, what are the advantages or disadvantages? Whenever we are going to have a tech partner solution, same for that as well. So in terms of custom solution, flexible and custom, so you can do your own changes whenever we are going for the custom solution, right? So let's say I don't like the pipeline for now. What I can do is I can quickly change the script. I can change whatever code I want, however I want, and basically I can start using it. In terms of tech partner solution, what happens is they are so basically they are ready-made tools, right? So they are ready-made tool, and then in terms of the so they are basically ready-made tool, and in terms of the changes, you would have to raise a particular enhancement request for the same, or you would have to ask your whosoever is your vendor, right, in terms of tech partner solution, to make those changes, and then you might have to wait for some time. Sorry. You may use existing tools. So in the program wide, people might be so in the program wide, the client might be using some existing tools, right? So we can quickly start using those, because the licenses would already be available for those tools. Repository would already be there, right? So that's another advantages of custom solution. From the tech partner solution, you would have to purchase the licenses. That's obvious, right? And then if not all of your developers are, or the DevOps team is like, if that's a new tool to your team, then they might have to go through the training as well. Quick first implementation, because most of the time we help them out to create the pipeline for the custom solutions. For us, it's like a ready-made, for us, it's like a already built pipeline. So we can quickly help out the client to implement that. But in terms of tech partner solution, the procurement process, licensing process, the agreement to work, training, that might take some time. So that might delay the whole pipeline implementation process. And then from the advantages of tech partner solution is you always have a tool support. You don't need a skilled people in terms of, because people who knows the scripting part, right? You don't need such guys whenever we are going for tech partner solution, because it's like mostly declarative. You just click your buttons and then your work is done. So that's the advantage. Pre-built utilities. So most of the tools are giving so many pre-built utilities like data migrations or org-to-org comparison. So these are pre-built tools which can be very handy. So, but obviously you have to pay a price for those as well, right? So those are the advantages. Now, in terms of disadvantages for the custom solution, cost to maintain. Obviously, you would need some guys who knows the scripting to maintain your code, and then only you would be able to survive, right? Because we will keep on enhancing our pipeline as per the time or as per the requirement. Because the first implementation would be very quick, but then we would have to move to the maturity model that I was showing, right? So parallel development. So then how we have to do a back merging. So those all needs to be maintained or would be supported by a DevOps team. So basically, in the tech partner solution, you have to pay a heavy price or to purchase a license price. That's what is the, I mean, I won't call it as a disadvantage, but that's an additional cost that a project might have to bear, right? Needs training that we have already discussed. Build from scratch. So custom solution, you have to start creating from scratch. So nothing is basically sort of ready-made. So you have to write your own scripts. You have to you need to first understand how the pipeline of the tool that you're going to use works. So that's where, so those are the advantages and disadvantages. On the basis of this, client can decide what, like how they want to proceed with the pipeline implementation. Are they going for the tech partner solution or for the custom solution? A quick walkthrough to the SF metadata API plus data packs. How data packs are different from the SF metadata. And if I will quickly talking about the SF metadata APIs as well, or SF metadata, if someone is new to the SF or the Salesforce world itself. So first of all, the Salesforce components are called as Salesforce metadata, or I usually call them as metadata. And for the velocity or the SFI component, so those are called as data packs. So anything that you see for the SFI component like OmniScript, data raptors, integration procedures, EPC components like product to or attribute assignments, attributes, velocity pick list, facets, all of these comes under the data packs. Now, metadata API format. So here we have seen that, basically for Salesforce metadata, we have two formats, metadata API format and source format. I think most of the clients, or I think 95% of the clients are already using the source format because that's very handy and that brings the flexibility to the developers, because in the previous metadata API format, all the files used to be in a single, let's say for the objects, all the fields, web links, validation rules, field sets, everything was basically merged into a same file called as .object, as in the object name .object as an extension. But now in the source format, all of those files basically are stored in a separate file. So let's say if as a developer, if you're working on some field, I'm working on a field, then there are very less chances, or we will never get a conflict, right? But in the previous metadata API format, we used to get the conflict because it is all getting modified in the same file. And Git, what I've seen is Git is not very, Git doesn't handle the XML format very easily, because if you look at the profiles, which are of like 20,000 lines, if you'll make a small change as well in the Git, you might see that change is propagating to like 15 changes or 20 changes in the file, XML file. So metadata is mostly in the XML files. There are few things like LWC components, static resources, which have some more files like JS files, .css, HTML file. But yeah, most of the components of the Salesforce are in the XML format. Now, if we'll talk about the SFI components, so those are called as data pack types. So, sorry. Now, in terms of data pack types, we have, so on the left-hand side that you see, these are all the data pack types. And on the right-hand side, those data pack types basically refers to the Salesforce object or the custom object, which the managed package brings in, right? So if we'll talk about the product too, you can see there's a huge table over here. So there are so many objects which a product two tries to fetch whenever you are trying to fetch a product, right? So all of these are called as dependencies as well. So whenever I'm trying to fetch product, it will fetch decomposition, relationship, orchestration scenario, price list entry, pricing element, all of these things with it. So this table is very, very handy for the developers, because let's say if a developer is new to the SFI world and he wants to fetch one product, then he might be wondering what are the components that is going to fetch along with the product. So when I say what are you going to fetch via BBT or the Industry DX Workbench CLI or the Workbench itself, so IDX tool. So these are the only two options that are available for the SFI component to be retrieved or to be imported, right? So we have to use one of these options. Now, in terms of the repository, how we can store our components in the repository. So what happens is clients who are new to the SFI world, so they always have the option how my component is going to look in the repository, right? So this is how it looks like. What happens is sort of a similar structure to what we see in the Salesforce component, but we don't have anything called as ForceApp main default or anything main default, right? So we don't have that sort of folder structure. But what happens here is you have something called as project path that's defined in your project.yaml file. Inside that path, you will have the folder with the data pack name. So here on the left hand side, in the first part, you see that all the okay, in the sorry. Okay, so in the left hand side, we see all the data pack types. So all of these product to OmniScript, so these are called as data pack types. And inside one of the specific, so if you look at any specific data pack type, then you will have the individual components of that data pack. And then once you click on that, so like let's say for in this particular screenshot, you see OmniScript, and inside that you have the specific OmniScript component, which is headset by English. And inside that you have all the JSON files. So here you'll see datapack.json is common in all the component files, and datapack.json is the file which is also called as parent JSON file, which bundles or binds all the child JSON files, and then it deploys in a particular order as well. So people might be having question how my OmniScript is going to. So let's say for an OmniScript we have multiple steps elements as well, right? And then how they are going to get deployed in a particular order. That order is maintained by this datapack.json file. So all the related fields of OmniScript and the order of the OmniScript elements are stored in the datapack.json. Similarly for any other component as well. Now, this is what we have already discussed. Quickly walkthrough of the environment strategy, the best practices around the environment strategy. Most of the guys would already know the licenses available, but let's quickly talk about that as well. So developer, developer pro, partial copy and full copy sandboxes. So the only difference is like, so there are like many differences, but the biggest one is about the capacity. So developer will come with 200 MB, developer pro will come with 1 GB, partial copy 5 GB, and full copy is same as source, which means whatever your production org is. So if it is like 1 TB, 500 GB or something like that, your full copy sandbox will be of the same capacity. Refresh intervals, as you can see, one day, which means that every day you can refresh your sandbox. So if I created one sandbox, I can keep on refreshing it daily if it belongs to developer or developer pro, but as in once a day only. Now, from the partial copy perspective, it is like 5 days. So in every 5 days interval, I can refresh my partial copy, and for full copy, it's 29 days. Now, another question which I have seen like people are very confused is developer and developer pro. These, whenever you create a dev or dev pro environment, it won't copy from the production. It won't copy any of the data, right? So SFI components are all data. So whenever I create or refresh or clone any environment, I won't get any data. I will only get metadata. So the data needs to be deployed separately. Whereas in the case of partial copy and full copy, the data gets copied. In partial copy, there is a limitation about the data, but in full copy, whatever data you have in your production, all of those that would be copied into your full copy sandbox. Now, guys, in terms of the environment strategy, so this is the model that we recommend as right. So multiple dev sandboxes, and then you have a golden EPC sandbox as well. So what happens with this golden copy EPC sandbox is anything that is getting developed for the product or its dependencies needs to be done here. All other things, non-EPC component plus SF components can be developed in dev 1 and dev 2. Now, developer will create a feature branch from the dev branch and will create a pull request. That pull request will be validated in the CI org, because Salesforce component can be validated without a deployment, but that's not the case with the SFI component. Those needs to be validated. Those needs to be actually deployed to get to validate those components, right? So what happens with those is we deploy those components in the CI org, and then if there are some dependencies which are missing, that gets failed, and then you would have to so basically the developer would have to merge those or fix those issues, whatever dependencies which are missing, and then the pipeline, then they would have to create a merge request or pull request again, and then once the CI deployment will happen again, and then once it is done, then what will happen is the code would be deployed to the CI org first successfully, and then once the code deployment is done, dev lead or tech lead will review your pull request or merge request, and once that has been approved, the code, the feature branch will pass to the dev branch, and the code would be deployed to SIT, and then UAT is staging production. So this is like part 2 production. Now, in terms of types of sandboxes, we have already discussed. The only thing to note here is developer pro needs to be used for the EPC development, because what happens, as I mentioned, SFI components are all metadata. Sorry, my mistake. SFI components are all data. Now, data is basically, so we have a capacity restriction in each type, right? So if you are using dev sandbox as the EPC sandbox, then you are going to have only 200 MB of space, right? Or data storage space. Now, if we have very low requirement, then it's fine. But we from the expert services side, what we say is we recommend to use at least Developer Pro for the EPC, right? If you have some partial copy licenses available, full copy licenses,
Yes,
I
Shubham.
wouldn't go for the full copy, but yeah, at least like
Sorry,
if you have the partial copy, you can also use the partial copy for Dev Pro. But
Shubham, sorry to
partial
interrupt
copy
you.
for the EPC development, but at least needs to go for the EPC development, because one product can create like
Yes,
many
Shubham,
records
sorry
at a
to
time
interrupt
as well.
you.
So whenever I'll
Shubham,
create one product, then it might have attribute assignments. Those attribute assignment might be creating some overrides, right? And then product child item.
hey, Shubham, I'm sorry to interrupt you. Look like your voice is breaking.
Okay,
Are you able to
can you
hear
hear
me?
me now?
Yeah, it's breaking, actually, it's chunking from the last, this slide, starting of this slide.
Okay, give me a minute. Fine now?
Yeah, much better now.
Okay, I think there was some issue with my AirPods. Yep. So I'll repeat again. So in terms of type of sandboxes, what we say is we recommend to use at least Developer Pro copy for the EPC development, because um, Developer Pro brings the data storage capacity of 1 GB, which is like you can create around 500,000 records, if I'm not wrong, because one record consumes 2 KB of space. Now, in terms of products, what happens is whenever we create a product, it basically consumes it basically internally it creates a lot of dependencies, right? So in terms of product, if we'll talk about, so it can have orchestration scenarios, it can have decomposition relationships, it can have so those are related to OM part, right? But if we'll talk about the indirect relationships, or basically which developer might not understand directly, right? So whenever we assign up an attribute to the product, it creates attribute assignment. So that's one record. And then if you are overriding it, so it creates multiple records for that, one for the non-override and one for the override. And then if we have some, so obviously we'll have price list entries, price book entries, and then object attribute fields. So basically the point is there are so many records which gets generated whenever you are working with product in the product console, right? So that's where we need to use Developer Pro at least for the EPC. And then if you have a partial copy, that's good. In terms of other things, then you can see all the cross boxes, which means that at least we need to use partial copy for this particular purpose. So we can quickly go through this. For hotfix, we can use Dev or Dev Pro. Again, we would, according to the license, number of licenses available, we do recommend that you go for the Developer Pro, because you are going to keep all the data or the metadata that you are deploying in production, because for the hot fixes, you would have to fix that bug, whatever you are facing in production, in the hot fix first, and then you would have to put it into the staging environment to test it and then promote to the production. So that's where if you have a Dev Pro, that's good. If you don't have a Dev Pro and you are working with Developer Sandbox, then you might have to move to Dev Pro after a few days, or once you are not able to fit your metadata and data into just 200 MBs. Now we'll quickly talk about the branching model. So we do recommend about the Git flow model. So Git flow model is I think the widely used model, which basically comprises of couple of branches, short-lived branches, couple of long-lived branches, and there are short-lived branches like the feature branch, bug fix branch, hotfix branches. So these are all the short-lived branches. So in this diagram, as you can see, this is like time variant. And there are like feature branches, develop branch. So develop branch is a long running trunk, and then you have release branches. So release branches depends on the strategy. One thing I would like to point here is like there is no one branching strategy which can fit all the requirements, right? So the branching strategy needs to be evolved as per the requirement or as per the release team, because sometimes clients wants to do only single development and they want to maintain it very straightforward, then it's fine. But whenever the parallel development works start, parallel testing they want to do, which we don't recommend for the parallel testing if you don't have only multiple SITs, but still some clients want to go for that, right? That's where the branching strategy gets complex, and we might have to work on those. Like we might have to find out how we are going to do a back merge, how we are going to do a forward merge, how we are going to maintain or resolve the conflicts. So those are the questions that we answer. We help the client to basically fix those issues, or basically implement the best practices around the branching strategy. So the point here is there's no one size which fits all the requirements, right? So it's not like a socks which can like anyone can wear it. So it totally depends on the requirement part. So
Development branch here is the long running trunk. And then you have the release branch. As I mentioned, it can be a long running trunk or it can be a short lived branch according to the requirement, and then the master branch. So very quickly, we'll try to explain you. From the development branch, as you can see these pink dots. So these are like the feature branch commits. So developer will create a feature branch, will try to merge their code into those feature branches. And once that is done, the feature branch gets back merged in, gets merged into the develop branch via pull request or merge request. So pull request, in most of the tools, we see that button as a pull request, but in GitLab, it is called as merge request, right? So I'll use both the terms. Now, once the development is done and we are ready to deploy it into higher environment, which could be CIT or SIT, we are going to create a release branch from here, and then we will start deploying it to the SIT environment, let's say. In case of any bugs in the, so now here you can see in the develop branch, we can keep on doing the next development as well. But let's say there is a bug in SIT, then we can directly cut out a bug fix branch from the release branch and start fixing it, right? So in terms of parallel development, if we are doing, we can keep on using develop branch, and then the previous release, which is already deployed to SIT, then we can keep on using a release branch and directly put our bug fixes there. I will show another diagram which might give you which might clear out whatever, if you have any doubts about what Shubham is saying currently, right? So that was about the release branch. And then let's say once we are done with the SIT and UAT testing and our code is ready to be deployed or promoted to production, then we are going to merge our release branch into the master branch and promote it to production. In case of any hotfix, or so hotfix are mostly like which are P1 and P2s. So I won't call it them as P2s as well, because P2s sometimes might require some functional changes. So mostly P1s, which requires very less code change, very less testing, and can be promoted directly to production. So which might need a very small tweak around into the code, just a quick field change or something which can be done very quickly, can be tested into your staging environment and can be promoted into the higher orgs. I've seen clients using a hypercare path as well. So that's for some fixes for the releases as well as some hot fixes as well, right? So that's where they uses a hypercare path, and apart from the hypercare path, they run normal releases as well. So it, as I mentioned, totally depends on the requirement of the client. Sorry, guys. In terms of the parallel development, so as I mentioned, right? So let's say if I'm running dev, so this dev is my long running trunk, release branch is there obviously, and then the master branch. So first of all, I'll keep on working on my track one. And after some time, so after once some of my development of track one is done, we'll move to track two, right? So because you would be developing on the track one itself. So let's say once track two is there, we'll cut out a branch from the track one branch to track two branch. And once any bug fixes or any new features which have been deployed or merged into the track one, those needs to be back merged. So this red line that you see, that is back merging, right? Here also you can see fixes back merge. Now, once the track one development is done, we are going to remove this branch after merging it with the dev branch. And then that needs to be back merged finally to the release, track two branch as well. And once, because as we know that track one is development is done, we can basically merge it to the release branch or create a release branch at that time. And then we can start deploying it to SIT, UAT, keep on fixing the bug fixes of SIT, UAT in this release branch, and can keep on using either track two or the development branch. So that basically gives the flexibility of doing the parallel development, as well as you can see here, as we are keeping two branches. The advantages of keeping two branches is that your code is completely isolated. So whenever we want to, so let's say there are some delays in track one, then we don't have to worry about that, right? So what we can do is, if your track two branch is completely isolated with track one and you have not done any back merges, then you can directly promote it. So they are like, so that those are the advantages of having the isolated branches as well. But most of the time, what people might be doing is they might be keep on doing back merging from the track one branch to track two branch. So basically, whenever you promote, so if there are any delays, then track one and track two, as this branch is having both the code, those like both the code can be promoted directly whenever you are merging the track two branch, right? So that's how you can handle multiple releases and keep on promoting your changes as well. Now this is like release train, like this is going to basically this shows you how my branching and the environment strategy works in parallel, right? So from the dev perspective, this is my dev branch, creating a feature branch, committing into the feature branches, and then merging it. Whenever you create this line that you see here, whenever we create a PR, our validation in the CI org is going to happen for the SF component as well as the SFI component. So actually a deployment would be happening into the CI org. And if it fails, this would be declined. So the leads who are going to decline this, developer would have to fix it again, merge it back into the dev branch. And once it is done, the code is in the dev branch, if we can keep on developing by putting it to the dev branch. But once the development is done, we can cut out a release branch, start deploying the code to SIT, UAT, and then once it is ready for production, merge my release branch to master branch, promote to production, deploy to staging. In case of any hot fixes, we can just move our code, cut out a hotfix branch from here. And then once it has been tested in staging, we can merge our hotfix branch to the master branch and promote the code to the production. We'll quickly talk about the Delta deployment. So this is like very important point that saves a lot of time and makes our pipeline very fast as well. What happens in the Delta deployment is now SFDX CLI is not capable of doing the Delta deployment automatically, right? So some of the client, if they are already doing Delta deployment, they might be handling it via Git diff. But what happens is we have a tool which is called as a sort of Velocity ES tool, and then that helps to deploy or do the Delta deployment. Now, if you don't want to use it, what you can do is you can do a Git diff as well. So Git diff, the last commit ID which was deployed successfully, and the current head of the branch. Now, doing that part, what you can do is you can keep on deploying only the Delta component. So you might have to write a quick script that only gives you the Delta component, but you have to be very careful about migrating the LWC components, static resources, because there you would have to migrate the whole folder, the experiences folder. So there you would have to migrate the whole folder, even though there is a simple change in a single file. So you might have to write your own script in terms of doing the Delta deployment by using Git diff, or else you can use the tool. But SFI or the IDX Workbench CLI or the VBT tool automatically supports your Delta deployment. So there is a flag called as git check. Now, if you'll put it as true, what happens is last time, so let's say currently we are doing the deployment. So currently we have C1, C2, C3. So these are the 3 commit IDs in my current dev branch, let's say. Those would be deployed to SIT branch. Now D1 is deployment 1 here. Now next time whenever we are, so this deployment was successful. Next time whenever we are promoting the code, what VBT or the IDX Workbench CLI will do is it will first fetch what was the last commit ID which was deployed to SIT. So that would be C3. Now it will check what is my current head. So my current head is C6, let's say. It will do a git diff automatically. But so all the coding part or the requirement of migrating stuff from one of the folder or basically putting things in under the manifest in the project file, that automatically is done by the VBT tool itself. So it will automatically do a git diff, which means C6 minus C3. Now this will provide us only C4, C5, C6 changes. So which means that if you have done any changes into one Omni script, one integration procedure, one template, then only those things would be deployed in the D2. So that's how the Delta deployment works for the SFI component. Now, Industry DX Workbench. Now, this is very important again in respect to how developers do their work, right? In terms of migrating the code from their org to repository or repository to org. So for the SF component, what I've seen is people might be using VS Code already, but for the SFI component, as I mentioned, that you might have to head back to the VBT as a CLI or to the Industry DX Workbench. I'll show you a couple of slides and then we will quickly move to a real-time demo as well. So what happens is this is a sort of a deployment pipeline. So development org. So here you might be developing your stuff and then committing your stuff via IDX Workbench, which I'm going to show you in the next slides, putting it to the version control. Then we might be using some of the custom solution or the tech partner solution. So that remains the same because tech partner solutions also uses SFDX CLI and the VBT in the background. So then whatever component you have merged, if you are doing the Delta deployment, those would be fetched and then would be deployed to the target org by using this automated server or automated deployment. And then the status of your deployment can be updated directly into the project management tool. So that's how the whole pipeline works. Now, in terms of the Industry DX project, what happens is Industry DX, you would have to, so basically you need to provide you have to put or fill out 4 options first, like the source, target, project, and your repository, right? So repository So repository, we can clone whatever repository we have been provided from the client, or as a developer, if you're using your personal repository, you would have to use it, clone it first into your local. Then once it has been stored, then you can use that as a source or a target. So it totally depends on you, or the situation on which you are working on, right? So if I'm working on a new user story, what from the developer perspective, what I need to do first is I need to fetch my code from my repository back into my dev org, right? So let's say if I'm using my personal sandbox, then it might not be updated, right? I might be on leave for 5 days. Whenever I come back, the first task for the developer before they start doing any development or bug fixes, I need to update my dev sandbox from the repository. Once that has been done, I'll do my development changes or my bug fixes. Once that has been done, I'll put it back into my feature branch by using this particular repository or the IDX workbench. So now what will happen as soon as you have to start committing something, right? You would have to create a project over here. So in the project, you have got two options. So this IDX workbench completely supports your SF metadata as well as the SFI data packs. So here you can see as all the data pack types are available here. So you can select one OmniScript, and from the Salesforce component perspective, again, you have all the metadata types available here. And then from that list, you can select it, click on fetch data packs. Fetch data packs will fetch the component of that particular data pack or metadata type. Now I can select whatever data components I need to select and then move it to the right. Here you can see a small button called as ignore dependencies. This is very useful whenever you are working with the EPC components or the SFI components as a whole. What this button does is by default, it will fetch all the dependencies. So let's say if I'm working on a new product, I would have to fetch all the dependencies and then need to decide what are the component or dependencies I need to migrate. But let's say if I'm working on a bug fix or any fix which requires a very small amount of changes, then we can select this particular button and it will only fetch, because I know what bug fix I have done, right? So it will only fetch the changes that you have selected on your, or you see on your right hand side. It will only select those components, and then I can click on save. Now keep in mind that if you are fetching the dependencies, this tool might take some time, because it basically fetches all of the components which are there in the right along with the dependencies from source as well as from the target, because it has got a comparison tab. So let's move to the next slide. So here you can see your 4 options: repository, source, target, and project. Now let's say if I have selected one OmniScript over here, right? So what this tool does is it fetches it from source as well as from the target. It compares both the things and then it shows you in the comparison tab. So that's why you might see that it is taking a bit longer. And so you have to be patient about this one, right? Because it is doing something. So it's not that slow as well, but let's say if you are fetching one product with all the dependencies, then you might see a delay because it would fetch each and every dependency. So let's say dependency in terms of it will fetch all the products which are assigned to that object type as well. Yeah. So let's say if you are using one product which is very common and then used in many bundles, and all of those bundles as well as the object types and any product assigned to that object type, or if you have a parent object type, so those things are fetched and then it has to compare those as well. So that's where it takes some time to fetch the things. But if you are fetching without dependencies, then it's very fast. Okay. So and then it shows you in the comparison tab, it shows you the changes line by line, how you see that in the Git console as well. So whenever you create a pull request or you go to a history of any file, you see the changes like this only. So the color coding it uses exactly same as how you see in the any of the Git UI tool. Now the advantage for this one is as this was created specifically for the SFI component, here you can see all the tags and then if something has changed. So in this OmniScript, we have changed the name from change to code to change to code 2. So you can see all of these changes like right away here. You can discard the changes, you can view the source file, complete source file. And then once you are satisfied with this, you need to migrate these changes. So here you can see, first of all, you can commit it. So this commit will be available whenever your target is your repository, because you can only commit in the repository, right? So you'll get this button, you can commit it, and then you can basically, first of all, you can migrate it and then you can commit it from this Git icon. And here you can see that all the basic Git operations are supported by this tool. So you can basically create a new branch if you want, you can pull your changes. So let's say if I'm working on my feature branch since last 5 days, then what the recommendation from our side is the developer should be first pulling the changes back to the feature branches, and then they should be going for the forward merge so that they don't get a conflict whenever they create a pull request or merge request, right? So those sort of best practice or recommendations needs to be taken care whenever we are using with the repository part. Now I will go to the demo, guys. Okay, so let's quickly go through this. So this is the tool, IDX Workbench. Now the 4 options that I was talking about, repository. So I have cloned my repository here. If you want to clone your new repository, what you need to do is just click on new repo, provide a new name. So name is just an alias over here. So don't worry, like you can give whatever you want, whatever alias that makes sense to you. Repository folder, if you have already cloned your repository, you can just select your path from here. Or if you want to clone, if you want IDX to clone the repository for you, you can provide the HTTPS URL over here. And please keep in mind that you would have to provide the password as well here, or else you can use the app password or app tokens now. So app tokens are very, very useful or handy. You can just directly go to your settings and then create an app token and then use that app token into your HTTPS URL so that you don't have to provide the password over here. Now that will store the repository. Then you can see that I can use, so these are all the orgs, and then you have this repository part as well. So I can use either source as repository or the org. So both, you can basically migrate things from org to repository or repository to orgs. Both are possible. Then as in the target, again, I can store anything, as I mentioned, org or repository. So here I'm going to select the repo. Cancel this. Yep. So this is already selected for me. So demo 1, as you can see here, and then I need to create a project. So in the project, I will say demo test, and then you can see here all the data packs are available. So I'm just going to select OmniScript quickly. And from the Salesforce side, I can select whatever I want, right? So Apex classes. Now this is going to fetch all the components from my org, as in which belongs to the OmniScript data pack type and the from the Apex class metadata type, right? Now, let's say if you think that this tool is hung or if it is not doing anything, then what you can do is you can click on debug and click on open logs, and that will show you how it is working, right? So what it is doing, what is the command it is running. In case of any errors, you can check these errors as well in the debug logs. That's very important again, right? So sorry. So here you can see a huge list of OmniScripts, which is all the OmniScript which are available in the org and the classes as well. So here I can select any OmniScript from here. Which one I want to select? Let's say this one. And same goes for the classes as well. So let's say I'll select this one. Now I can ignore the dependencies or I can fetch with the dependencies. It's totally fine. Just for the demo purpose, I'll ignore it. So now you might be thinking why I've ignored the dependency when I'm not fetching the EPC component, but OmniScript can also use the data raptor, right? So I'm just interested in the OmniScript because let's say that's the only thing that I've made changes. Now, if you want to change your branch, you can just click on this button, but currently I'm on dev branch, right? So let's say as a developer, I would have to start working on a feature branch. So I'll just select my feature branch, right? So create new branch. So let's say feature / test_demo 1, 2, 3. And from the dev branch, so checkout branch. Now you can see I'm on feature test demo. So that's good. Sorry. Let's cancel this. Cancel this as well. Now I'll click on save. So now what it is going to do is it is going to fetch that OmniScript and Apex class from source and target. That's how it will show you in the comparison tab. Now, as I've told you, this uses the same color coding and the comparison as what we see in the Git repo, right? So if that's a new component, it will be marked in a green color. If that's if there are some changes in the component, that would be marked in an amber color. And if there are no changes in that component, then it would be without any color, right? So you would not see here because we have a filter applied over here. So as soon as this fetches this component, it will show me what like the color coding as well as the component as well. Now, if you want to see what this tool is doing in the background, you can see here, okay, this is what it is doing, deploying some of the default data raptors in the org if my version has changed, or if I'm working with this org after some time. So it basically tries to deploy the default data raptors of Industry DX Workbench CLI tool, or we can call it as a VBT as well. Now, in case of any errors, it will show you the error right away here, or what's happening in the tool in the background. And some quick information is being provided here as well. So as you can see, building source data map, as in I have already fetched it from the training one environment. Now I'm going to store it. And then the target, from the target, it is again going to fetch the OmniScript and the Apex class. And then we'll store it, basically store it in the local, which is in the temp memory. And then what it will do, it will try to compare those things from the training and the demo org, and then it will show me the difference. So from here, what you can see is all of these are in the green color. Now this is a filter that if there are components which you don't see here, but you try to fetch it, because you might have this filter already selected, which is new item and change item. So here if I'll remove it, it will show me all the unchanged item as well. But for now, we don't have any unchanged item, so that's fine. I'll remove it. Again, some of the quick tips, like if you want to search something, I can just select contract, right? So in term, basically, if you have many components which you try to fetch and you want to just quickly search whether that has been fetched or not, you can just search by this as well. So I'll save again and then save. And then now let's say if I want to migrate it, so I'll just select. Now this Git icon I'll only get whenever I have my target selected as demo, as well as this Git icon, right? If I'm trying to do a migration between org to org, then I won't get this Git icon. Now I'll say migrate. So all of these components have been migrated, but only in my local repository. So what I'll do is I'll first commit it. Now here the commit message, it will ask for a commit message, and please try to put a commit message that actually makes some sense, right? So that the DevOps team or the release team can use it for some backtracking. Don't try to put some generic commit message like my change 1, 2, 3. Don't put such commit messages. So here I'm going to put test demo for IDX. And then, so from the developer's perspective, they can put their user story name or the Jira number, or if that's a defect, again, the defect number, some quick summary about why this change is required, what are the components we have changed. So that whenever we are doing a backtracking, that can be basically by looking at the commit message itself or the feature branch name. Again, there is like, we do have a best practices around the branching naming convention as well, right? What is the name, how the branch naming convention should be done, how a bug fix branch naming convention should be done. So try to put a proper commit message so that can be used for the backtracking part as well. I'll just put a commit over here. It has been committed. Now from here, what I can do is I can quickly push my changes to the remote, because all the work which we were doing was only done in the local till the time. Now I have my personal repository over here. So once this has been pushed, I'll move. Yeah. So as you can see here, it has been pushed. Now I'll go to my repo. I'll click on branches. And here you can see 20 seconds ago, the branch has been created. So the point here is this particular tool is connected to the repository directly. And now my branch has been pushed. What I can do is I can quickly check my changes over here as a developer. Change destination. So here, as I created this from dev, it will be merged to the dev branch, right? So just one change. And if I want to see the diff, so here you will see that one OmniScript and a couple of files. Okay, so as a couple of files for the classes and the whole OmniScript, right? So this is just one OmniScript over here. And all of these are JSON files. As I mentioned, datapack.json is the parent JSON file, which binds all the child JSON files. Now what I can do is I can create my pull request from this page itself. And again, as I mentioned, title should be something which makes sense, or it would be auto-populated. And description, if you want, you can put the description, add your tech lead or dev lead or whosoever is approving the pull request for you, there's them as a reviewer. And then I can create my pull request. Now what happens is a pipeline should be in the way that as soon as I create my pull request, a pipeline should be triggered directly. And then it should try to validate or by component by deploying them in the CI org. So this, if I'll click on the pipelines, as you can see, as soon as I clicked on that button a few seconds ago, this pipeline is already triggered. So this pipeline will try to validate my components, and then it will try to basically by deploying it. As I mentioned, velocity or the SFI components are all data. So they can only be validated during the deployment, because there are triggers which are running in the org. And if you have any dependencies error that cannot, so that your record cannot be inserted, that you will get only during the deployment part. So it will try to deploy it into the CI org. Once this is successful, what will happen is it will be marked as successful. Okay. And then according to the pull request status, which gets updated here. So once, if it fails, then dev lead or tech lead would have to decline this particular pull request. If it passes, they need to approve it. And then the actual deployment job would be triggered, which will deploy your components to the next environment, which would be your SIT. And that's called as, so basically the validation part would be CI, because we are continuously integrating. So developers are putting their code, we are validating it. That's continuous integration. And then as soon as you merge your feature branch into the dev branch or any branch, right? And then your pipeline triggers, that's called as continuous deployment. So that's CD. Okay. So this would be running. I can quickly go through the pipeline logs as well, how it looks like. I can show you a quick demo, quick walkthrough about the deployment part. So here you can see, this is only doing the Delta deployments, right? So this is all doing the Delta deployment. That's why you will see that only one class, the one which we have selected, is getting deployed over here. In terms of the VBT part, it is again going to deploy only that particular change. And that changes velocity component. And once it is done, it will mark this particular deployment as success. And then as a lead, I can approve it. And then automatically, so see, there are two parts, right? If that's a particular, that deployment belongs to the, let's say SIT, that's your first org, right? And as we have already verified it, we can quickly deploy it automatically. But let's say for the deployment to UAT, you might need the SIT sign off, right? So that's where the manual deployment might need to be triggered. And that can be triggered. So each UI or the tool that you might be using might have some different UI or some different buttons, how you can trigger. But so basically all of these tools, because I worked on all the tools, right? They have an option to manually trigger the pipeline as well. So here from the Bitbucket pipelines perspective, I can select my branch. So let's say I've selected my dev branch or release branch, whatever I can select, and then the pipeline, right? So SIT deploy, like this, you can create your UAT deploy, production deploys, and then that can be triggered manually as well. Meanwhile, this is running. I can quickly give you a walkthrough about the pipeline code. So there's a file called as Bitbucket pipelines.yaml, and this is how the code gets written, right? So these are the ones which I've created on line number 4. So these are called as anchors. So anchor is a part which we can, which are created as a template, and then we can keep on reusing these anchors in the template or in the below deployment jobs, right? So pull request, whenever a pull request gets created from these branches, which starts from feature, defect, bug fix. So again, case sensitive, right? So then anything which gets started with these branches and are part of the pull request, this part of the deployment or the pipeline is going to get triggered. And again, this is all shell part or shell script. So people who knows the shell script, they can quickly write it, as in how to do the Delta deployments, how the code would be deployed, and then a quick cleanup about the OmniScript and template, because the version of these will keep on getting generated in the target also. That this basically, we have to keep on thinking about how we can improve our pipeline and keep on putting that code into the our code. Now, as I had created some anchors over here, then I can directly use it into the my deployment job. So here you can see velocity deploy and then velocity deploy here as well. Now we can create a sort of dashboard as well in terms of monitoring our part, right? So here you can see SIT, UAT, production. So whatever environments you have selected in your pipeline, if you are doing the deployment, it would be updated here and it will show you like it was done on 3 days ago, what is the commit ID, which was last deployed. So you can keep a track of your deployment part as well. And from here itself, you can directly go to the pipeline job, from where to where it was deployed, what are the components it deployed, Jira issues, if you have connected your Jira application with this Bitbucket pipeline. So all of these things are very handy, and when you can quickly check all of these things on this part. So pipeline, so this was successful. I can approve my pull request now. Approve merge. Now you can see this pull request has been merged to the dev branch. If I'll go to my pipeline, you will see the CD part has been triggered now, and this has been triggered from the dev. So this is how your actual CI/CD happens. Yeah. Back to the slide, guys. So I've basically covered the best practices around the branching strategy, environment strategy, how to do the Delta deployments, how the SFI component looks like in the repository. And so there is like many more things, but I won't be able to cover it in this call. And we might have another call if Amit permits, or if basically if I get some more time about recording it and then sharing it with you guys, I would be very happy to do that. Right. In case of any queries, you can write it to Amit, and maybe like if Amit can send it to me, I can answer your queries as well. That's not an issue from my side. So that's all from my side, guys. Thanks a lot for if you're watching it. Amit, back to you if you are there.